and I went to Santa Clara University before becoming a Jesuit volunteer myself. I served down in Los Angeles, California at a nonprofit organization called My Friend's Place, which served predominantly young people experiencing homelessness and aged out foster care youth. I've got Courtney Child and Laura Strubeck both queued up and ready to introduce themselves to you all today. So I'm going to bring in Courtney to just introduce herself. Hello.
Hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Courtney. I'm originally from Kansas City, a recent graduate of Creighton University in Omaha. And this year I currently serve in Milwaukee, Wisconsin as a nurse at the Bread of Healing Clinic for the Uninsured.
Awesome. I'm going to swap you out and bring on our Director of Programs. Hey, Laura.
Hey, Dominique. How are you?
Good. Do you mind introducing yourself to folks listening in?
For sure. Hey, everyone. My name is Laura Strubeck. I am currently the Director of Programs here at JVC. I'm originally from just outside of Scranton, Pennsylvania. I'm a proud University of Scranton graduate. I'm also an FJV. I served 2 years with JVC. My first was in Syracuse, New York. I worked for Sarah House. In my second year, I was in San Diego, and I worked for San Diego Youth Services.
Cool. Can you share more about what your roles looked like at your placement sites when you were at JV?
Sure, yeah, definitely. My first year, so I worked at an organization called Sarah House. It is a hospital hospitality house. So I always told people when they asked me what that meant, I was like, it's like a Ronald McDonald House, but for adult patients and families. Syracuse, New York is kind of a hub for the entire state of New York. There are 5 major hospitals there. So oftentimes there were people coming to the area that didn't have a place to stay for treatments, or they had loved ones in the hospital and couldn't afford to stay in a hotel. So Sarah House provided a place to stay, a place to eat, transportation back and forth to the hospital. So I worked mostly, it was a small operation. It was just myself and the executive director and then a ton of volunteers. I worked mostly at coordinating the volunteers, arranging transportation back and forth to hospitals, sometimes going grocery shopping, sometimes shoveling the sidewalk. Most days, spending time with guests who would come and check into the house. But yeah, that's it. It was a whole range of things because it was such a small group of people, but I love the time I spent there and the interactions I had with them, and learned so much from our executive director. And then my second year, I think I realized during my first year I wanted to spend more time working with adolescent youth in some capacity. So that took me out to San Diego, where I served for San Diego Youth Services, which is like an umbrella organization in San Diego that all worked with foster youth mostly. And actually 3 of my housemates that, we lived together in community, we all worked for San Diego Youth Services, but in a different site. So my site was called The Bridge, and it was a group home in like the North Park neighborhood of San Diego. It was just a regular house on a street. It had 9 beds. It was co-ed for foster youth who were just a bit higher need instead of going to a foster family. And they ranged in age from about, the youngest while I was there was probably 13, and they could stay there until they turned 19 and aged out of the So my role there was a case manager. So I spent a lot of my time driving around in a big white van and taking them to doctor's appointments, dentist appointments, therapy appointments, doing school drop-offs, meeting with their teachers, kind of serving as their guardian. But what was really cool about the year that I was there, there wasn't a ton of turnover in the house. So a lot of the 9 youth that were there were pretty consistent from the entire year of service, which I think is what was such a blessing, because I think it took so much time to kind of build that rapport with them that, by the time, a couple months in, I was able to get comfortable and they were able to get comfortable with me, and actually a drastically different 2-year experience, but I learned so much in the process.
So I know the term for serving 2 years within JVC. Can you talk more about what we call folks that serve more than 1 year in the domestic program? And sometimes folks I know go on to do international too. So if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so the proud choose to do it for more than 1 year. Refer to them now as additional year volunteers, or belovedly known as AYs. This year we have 5 AYs that are serving with us. It used to be a lot more back in the day. People just kind of tended to stick around or swap regions and that sort of thing. But it's a really special thing to be an additional year volunteer. And I think for those smaller groups of us that journeying along together for our second year, we really grew close because we had that shared experience of having these 2 drastically different years, 2 drastically different community experiences and work placement experiences. But in JVC, you have the option, if you want to stick around for a second year, you could stay at your current placement if you love it so much and want to continue to grow in that role, or you can switch it up and do something completely different. And for our domestic volunteers, you could switch it out and go to the international program, which we have a few JVs that have done that I've worked with, or you could flip-flop the other way around and come back in from international and serve a year in the domestic. But yeah, I definitely encourage it. I learned so much. I think if you're not done with JVC after 1 year, it could be a great option for you too.
Lots of options. So Courtney is a current JV. And so Courtney, can you share more about what your placement site is this year?
Yeah, of course. So it's called Butterfield Clinic. It's on the north side of Milwaukee, which is a primarily African-American neighborhood. And it's a free primary care and public health clinic for adults who don't have any health insurance. So we see anybody from usually 18 to 65 and provide them their medications for free, have medical appointments, can refer for specialties, have behavioral health, social work, and a dental clinic all on board within the one place.
Wow. So who do you speak with on a daily basis as far as like other coworkers or other folks that work there? Have they had volunteers for a long while?
Yeah, so before my placement site had JVs, they had LVs. So Lutheran volunteer through the Lutheran Volunteer Corps. This year is the first year in a long time that we don't have an LV at my site, and it's just me, just the JV. But they've had JVs for, I think, about a decade or more. So they're used to JVs around the place, used to the changing of the guard come August, which is really cool to have a site that appreciates the values of the program and is really, really well equipped to support JVs during their year, during the time of transition, and then during the year itself, and really provide a holistic experience. Besides me, there's one other nurse at the clinic, the director of nursing, Kathy, and she and I are kind of partners in crime. We run the nursing department. We usually have a lot of volunteers, usually 1 a week, but with the current pandemic, it's just the 2 of us kind of taking on the world. Kind of being that interim between social work, dental, medical, pharmacy, all of that. So she's kind of my main point person, but the staff itself is small. It's about a dozen. And right now it's just us. And since all of our volunteers, we normally have that bring a lot of life to the place, can't volunteer right now. So we've really gotten close, I think, just that staff because of the number of staff and because of the current conditions.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about what that's looked like on the front lines? I know, JVC, we were in our offices, at our homes, and in terms of the staff, but we know there are a lot of JVC volunteers that are continuing to work. Can you talk a little bit more about how COVID-19 has sort of impacted your everyday, like what you're doing? Or I guess your approach for, providing services as well.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because even though we are a health clinic and we provide continuous care for our patients, a lot of them are surprised that we're still open, which is always a shock. Even 6-7 weeks into the pandemic, patients call and are so relieved to find out that, yes, in fact, we are open. However, being open doesn't look the same as it did a month ago, a month and a half ago. So we still provide patients with their medications, but are scaling back the doctor's visits that we have. And so that's putting a little more responsibility on the plate of the nurses to assess and to make sure patients' needs are being met, and have behavioral health and social work and pharmacy come in and say, hey, when the patient is here, I need you to check in with them on these things, or make sure that I talk to them or have the ability to call them. So we're still providing care. We're still open for our patients and trying to meet their needs. And it's very exciting. Today, we just got COVID-19 testing kits. So starting next week, we'll be able to, be able to test symptomatic patients, which is big, but has been very interesting to see it from the perspective of just our patients, and during a time where things are really focused on inpatient and ERs, still making sure that we are meeting the patient's needs and preventing those stays and able to take care of them holistically.
Yeah. So you're obviously talking a lot about your placement site. Maybe you can switch gears a little bit to talk about sort of community in a different sense, because obviously as Jesuit volunteers, you live in community with other folks. So can you share a little bit about community life and maybe like a community story or memory from this year that's really stood out to you, either in the present moment or, prior to what's happening right now?
Yeah, so I'm really thankful that all 4 of my other community mates are still here, and we still get to live an intentional community. And I always joke that it was hard to imagine spending more time together than we were before this, an intentional community, but how we've had even more time to spend together during this pandemic and the quarantine, and just how much fun that has proven to be. For example, like at the beginning of the year, we actually spent the first night before we started work, we went to the Wisconsin State Fair. And this is a really big deal in Wisconsin, and we actually went on the very last night that they had it. And we had a really fun time. One of our favorite memories as a community, I think, is riding the Ferris wheel together, because several of our community members are very afraid of heights.
Oh, wow.
And so after having known each other for not even quite 2 weeks yet, kind of taking that on together and learning to support each other from the beginning. But even more recently, like over Easter weekend, we were supposed to have the Milwaukee Marathon and Half Marathon race. And obviously that was canceled because of the current situation. But I still decided to run it on the day of, just because I'd been training, and our other community mates are planning on running it later. But it was really fun because that Saturday before Easter, I ran the half marathon, and my community mates were still there cheering me on. So one of them met me at the halfway with some oranges and water. My two of my roommates actually ran the last half mile with me, and then the other 2 were waiting at the finish line. So able to still have that, like I said, support, even during kind of a time where everything is a little bit uncertain, to know that what is still certain is the strength of our community. And on Easter, we had an Easter brunch at our house. We made pancakes and eggs and cut up fruit, and just had a whole big spread. And a few days later, one of our community mates actually planned a little mini indoor Easter egg hunt for us. So trying to keep up with those traditions that we love, and just maintaining those while we're in community, even during a time of quarantine.
Kudos to you for still running a half marathon. I feel like a big component to that is typically having, like, just being surrounded by, not that I know, I don't run, but like being around a group of people that are also like all doing it together. So that is pretty powerful that you were able to still share that moment with your community. And thank you so much for sharing all those little stories. And also brave community mates for taking on a Ferris wheel, even though they're scared of heights. Jeez.
Yes. Yeah. They're a courageous bunch.
Yeah. So Laura lived in two different communities, so I feel like you have many a community story. You could, I don't know, pick one, pick stories from both, whatever you're feeling called to.
There's so many. But I feel like my memory is getting more and more faded as the years stretch out. So like as Courtney was talking, I was like, oh, we went to a state fair and my roommate ran a marathon without registering because he didn't want to pay the registration fee. And that's a thing that you do in JVC.
Uh-huh.
That's part of it. But I think like I transitioned from like snowy cold to like 8 months of winter in Syracuse to like lots of time indoors with my community, hibernating for the winter, so to speak. And then transitioned to San Diego, where I just remember for the first like 2 to 3 months, we just went to the beach every single weekend together.
Mm.
And just spent that time just connecting with one another and truly building a community right off the bat. But when I look at both of those years, although the experiences were drastically different in community and the personalities were drastically different,
Coast, weather, everything.
everything so different. I think about like the highlights of my experience, and it was in the little moments that we had together. And I think in both community situations, we always shared meals together every day during the week. So taking turns cooking, but also just having that space at the end of my day to like come home and process my day with somebody else, and to know that everybody's experience is hard and challenging. But just to have that space where we all understand each other in a certain capacity and are all like in this together. Those times around our dinner table was just sacred space to me, and I think to my community members. And I remember in San Diego, and it's probably still the same table. It's this tiny little circle table that's probably meant for like two people. But all six of us would crowd around that space, and there was never any personal space. But we would just be there and unpack our days and the challenges of public transportation, or the challenges of our clients, or students, or whoever we were working with. But I just look back and I think about that sacred space that we had together.
Yeah. Food, communal dinners, and just communal meals, so important. I remember there was a period of time where my community tried to do like brunches on Sundays, and then we also would have our business meetings, but we had to change it because then it turned into like a whole day affair, because it'd be like we ate brunch for like a while, or kind of like lackadaisical, and we're like, oh, we should start a business meeting, and then it would go like way too late, or like we can't do this every weekend. It's like a lot.
No, business meetings, don't even go there. That was such a stress on every community.
Every community.
It probably still is.
Yeah.
I love it.
So what advice would you give to someone that's considering entering community, moving along one another, other people within the four values, and growing as individuals, and faith and justice, like all the good things that come out of JVC?
Yeah, people ask me this question a lot, and I always feel like I say something different, but I feel like in the moment, I'm just thinking, the advice that I would give to an incoming JV, or even to myself back in the day, would just be to be open to the experience, and not limit yourself because of fear of being challenged. I think one of the first things I always say to the JVs at orientation, and even before that when I connect with them, is this is going to be hard. This year is meant to challenge you and push you outside of your comfort zone, year or years, if you decide to do two. But I think always having that reminder of like, even in the moments when this is challenging and it's hard, you're growing, and you may not see it in those moments, but it'll catch up with you eventually. So I would just say be open. I think for me, like even in my own social groups before JVC, I would tend to gravitate towards people who are like-minded and believe the same things that I believe in, and have similar hobbies and interests. And I think what I learned in JVC is like stretching yourself beyond your comfort zone and finding that space to connect and truly understand the differences in one another is where you grow beyond who you are. So I think remaining open to the experiences and to building those relationships with your community members, to people in your city of service or country of service, and just, going along with it. That's probably what I would say.
You just had a really powerful quote that needs to be like everywhere. So thanks for sharing. And
Put it
then
on a t-shirt for next year, Dominique.
yeah, there we go. How about anything from your time on staff that you want to share as far as retreat memories or just working with other coworkers and like supervising like a bajillion people in program and stuff? So.
No, thanks. Yeah, I've been on staff. This is my third program year, and I can't believe it is. Like I made a drastic shift to move away from higher education and come to JVC because I felt like I still wasn't done with JVC and felt called to be back here in this space. And I just think about like all the places I've been in these past 3 years and the people I've met from all over the United States to Micronesia and back, and all of these JVs that I've been able to kind of journey along with. And I think back especially probably to my first year on staff, and a coordinator had left, and a lot of the responsibilities fell on me to like go visit all these communities in the fall. So I kind of spent the fall just traveling around the entire state of California and Arizona and spending time with the JVs and all of those communities. And I look back on that as just such sacred space. And just, I think that's when I felt like I'm where I'm supposed to be, like being with these people, being in the space with JVC. It just connected me back to my own experience in a lot of ways where, yes, it's, they're different people and it's different experiences, but at the core, like the values are there, and the desire to, learn and stretch and grow is there. And just to be able to be in those moments and hear those stories, that accompaniment just means so much to me. And I just feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. I always tell people I think I have the coolest job in the world because I really feel like I do. Yeah, so that's probably what I would say.
Yeah, learn and stretch and grow for sure. Yeah, I do. I remember when you were like, oh yeah, I'm going to be out of the country for a little bit. And I was like, she kind of just started not too long ago. It's like really thrown her into the fire there. So
I think I just constantly had like an email away message up for like months because I just like wasn't around.
Yeah.
Wasn't available to staff. I was just like hanging out with the JVs. It was great.
Yeah. And it definitely, gave you an opportunity to sort of step back into that lens of what a year looks like after having been away. So that was, I guess, a benefit to all of that. So that's awesome.
Dove right back in.
So Courtney, you're in how many months in?
Almost 9.
9. Okay.
Yeah.
9 months in. So, obviously at the same time, you're sort of 9 months in, getting towards that, 11, 12 month marker. We've got placed volunteers we're also preparing to transition them in as you'll be transitioning out. So I was just curious what advice you might give to those folks who are preparing for sort of what you've been journeying along for the last 9 months doing.
Yeah, I think the best advice I would give right now is just lean in. Lean into discomfort, lean into the moments of joy, lean into the moments of challenge, lean into, just those periods where you are outside your comfort zone, like Laura said, and because there's going to be a lot of them, like she said, can definitely attest to that. But I think it's a simultaneous, like you need to be able to give yourself grace. You need to be able to give your community grace and understand that you're all going through something for the first time. And when you're at work, you may have hard days and not every day is going to be perfect. But there are always moments of joy. Like there are always moments of joy no matter what. I think it's just having that, that prayer life, that interior life, we're able to recognize those moments where you do see God and where you see God in other people and in your work and in yourself. But just, giving yourself the room to not have all the answers and to be curious and to lean in.
Yeah, the not having all the answers thing is so important because there's so many moments. Even I remember when I was a JV where I was like, okay, I got this down. I get my role. I understand the organization that I'm working within. I've got this, and then it'd be like something wild would happen. It's like that you just can't predict, or there's a new lesson to be learned, alongside those you're working with.
Definitely. Always a new lesson to be learned, even when you have a routine.
Even when you have a routine. And then as far as the 4 values go, like I've been asking folks like to sort of pick one. Otherwise it's like an hour long conversation about all 4. But can you share like how have you grown within, one of the values perhaps?
Yeah. I would definitely say we've grown a lot in simple living, which I really enjoyed. I've always considered myself kind of a minimalist, but have really realized that it's not necessarily like getting rid of all your material items that is the definition of simple living, but really taking on a certain attitude and a certain mindset of just being intentional, having an intentional approach to life, and how you spend your money, how you spend your time, how you use your resources, and just really, I always tell my family and stuff, I really love taking the bus. And I really miss taking the bus. And so just little things like that, things I'm trying to, think about what I'm going to take with me. And actually on Earth Day, a couple of days ago on Wednesday, we had our second community lights out day.
Okay.
So a couple of like electricity fast, but really more just light. And so we chose not to turn any of our lights on that day. And when it got dark at night, we made dinner, ate dinner, cleaned up by candlelight, showered by candlelight. And so just really kind of stretching ourselves in those ways. And something that I did not predict, but has been kind of a fun experience in simple living is we're doing home haircuts. Because we can't go out and get haircuts. So actually one of our community mates has been cutting all of our hair during this time, just talk about simple living and the joys and the laughter that really do come from that. And it's not all of, what you don't have, the things you have to take away, but what you can give and what you can learn.
Yeah, it's a brave step when you hand a community mate a pair of scissors and give them permission to
it is very brave. Yeah.
I'm going to bring Laura back to share any last thoughts, and then I'll bring you back, and then we'll close. So Laura, there's a question that just came in. Is the application process hard? I'm an evacuated Peace Corps volunteer. What do you have to share about that?
Is it hard? No, I don't think our application process is hard. I think it's designed in a way that it'll help you discern if JVC is the right place for you. Just the way the questions were put together, it hits on all of our values and just what you're seeking in a volunteer program. I will say that spots are filling up real fast. So if you are interested, get to work on your application ASAP. We're likely going to have a wait list at some point in the next couple of weeks. So if you're interested, feel free to get that app in soon.
Cool. And then is there anything else you wanted to share with folks that maybe you hadn't shared earlier, or any updates?
Oh man, it's so broad and vague. No,
it's the anything else question, in case you have something like, that Courtney was sharing that you're like thinking about or whatever. Yeah.
No, yeah, I think I just have a tremendous amount of love and gratitude for this program, for what it did to me just individually and the people that came into my life because of it. And I'm not just saying that because I work here, but I really, truly love and deeply care for the mission of JVC. And I think, like we've been saying, like I said, like Courtney said, if you truly want to lean into this experience, the outcome will be beyond anything that you could have expected or anticipated. I think I take a piece of my experience as a JV, and I have taken a piece of my experience as a JV everywhere that I've been and gone, and in the relationships I've built since then, and that it's been, 10, 11 years. So I think that speaks for itself. And I'm just grateful that I, took the leap. I could have gone in many different directions after I graduated from college, but I'm just really grateful that I chose JVC and that I learned as much as I did in the process.
See, you still had some more in you. That was beautiful. Thank you so much for joining, Laura. I'll see you at many meetings, Zoom meetings in the future. But thanks so much for coming on and sharing more about your time as a volunteer and your time on staff.
Thanks so much for the invitation. Thank you so much, Dominique, for everything that you're doing, especially right now. I think, we're really leaning on you for all these connections and spaces. And I don't think everybody in the greater FGV world realizes all the work that you're putting into creating these spaces. So if I haven't already expressed gratitude, I wanted to say that now. Thank you for all that you do.
Thanks, Laura. Take care. And then I'm just going to bring Courtney back to share anything else that's on your heart, on your mind, or for folks. I know you're hoping to share this with people that follow your vlog. Maybe you could share about that. I put you on the spot. I don't know if you want all these people to follow you on your vlog. Now they're going to know about it.
No, it's okay. Yeah. When I first, over the summer, when I was preparing for JVC and trying to figure out how I was going to document my experience and keep in touch with it after my year was over, I kind of landed on having a vlog, which is very different for me because I'm an introvert, and so I normally shy away from being the center of attention. But I've had a lot of fun with it. My little brother made my intro sequence. It's a little animation of Courtney.
So good. It's so good.
Yeah, he's a sophomore in film school, so that was right up his alley. Cool. But one thing, it is on the blog as well, but it's just a quote that was up in one of the schools where I served abroad in the Dominican Republic the summer before my senior year of college, which I kind of accredit with my eventual discernment into JVC. Was kind of those 5 weeks there, but something that I think about a lot in my JV experience, and especially now. And I'm going to say it in Spanish because it was written in Spanish, but it's translated into English. But empieza donde estás, usa lo que tienes, haz lo que puedas, pero actúa, which means start where you are, use what you have, do what you can, but act. And I think that really gets at the heart of, like Laura was talking about, like why to do JVC, and also in this time of uncertainty, just knowing that even the littlest actions have impact.
So true. So true. There are so many golden moments of wisdom in this chat today. I am so grateful for both of you. And thank you for continuing to serve folks in the capacity that you are at your placement site. And I'm glad to hear that you have a supportive work environment and a community that you can still laugh and connect with once you return home. And I'm just so grateful for you for coming on here. Thanks so much. I've talked to you via email, scattered throughout the year, so it's great to be on here with you.
Thank you so much for the invitation and allowing me to share some of my stories and experience.
Yeah. Everyone else that's listening, we'll have another conversation tomorrow, 3:30, to wrap up National Volunteer Week with two FJVs who also formerly served on staff. So it's going to be a good time. And then on Sunday, we'll have our last Sunday liturgy. And you can find all of this on our website under alumni, stay involved, and there's events listed. So thanks so much for tuning in, and have a great rest of your afternoon, evening, wherever you are, whatever the time zone is. And thanks for joining in.